Welcome to Hidcote Garden. We're celebrating a special year this year. In 1907, Lawrence Johnston and his mother bought Hidcote and then set about designing this wonderful garden. In 1948, Lawrence Johnston gave this special garden to the National Trust, and so this year we're celebrating 75 years since the National Trust took ownership and continued Lawrence Johnston's work. As Hidcote's head gardener now, I've been here 3 years and I follow a long line of head gardeners that have followed from Lawrence Johnston's time when he left the garden in 1948. I'd like to show you some of the autumn highlights around the garden now. We're now in the red borders. Lawrence Johnston developed the red borders between 1910 and 1914 and then went on to build the gazebos just off to my right. The borders are a mix full of shrubs and perennials and tender perennials that we plant every year. So the shrubs are the permanent stock, followed by the herbaceous perennials and then some of the tender perennials that we bring on in the glasshouse. It's a whole mix from berberis and cotinus, the shrubs sort of behind me, right through to the sort of more tender cannas and then through to a series of salvias. One of my favourite is Salvia Royal Bumble, which actually has survived very well over the winter and so actually produces a better stock as a result. Welcome to the productive garden. This area has seen a number of changes in the last few years, not least because of the pandemic and the lack of resources, and we've had to reduce what we do. So one of the quarters is now a grass space that we use for children's activities, but the other spaces we're actually using more as Johnston would have used them. So we're bringing on plants, we're buying things in that we like the look of or that work with what we know Johnston planted, and we're trialling them. And from that we can then determine whether we want to take them into the garden and we want to use them in the beds and borders. So that's really where we're going with the essence of Lawrence Johnston's ideas and using that trialling space. This is the Fuchsia Garden, and I wanted to show you one particular fuchsia. Johnston designed this garden in about 1910, and at the time he planted roses. And it wasn't until towards his later time at Hidcote, between 45 and 48, that actually he planted this garden with fuchsias. So we're now replicating what he planted. This particular fuchsia is Fuchsia Hidcote Beauty. It's a beauty, as the name suggests. It is very tender and we have to take it in the winter, and then we've used these planters to plant it out and really display it in the best way it can. It's surrounded by fuchsia dying embers and fuchsia microphylla, which make up this garden. And then within that we use the euonymus microphylla instead of the box planting for the low hedges around it. So we're now at the Italian shelter, which was once used as a space that people could change so that they could go and swim in the bathing pool that's just behind me. We've come from the Fuchsia Garden, which was really bright and perhaps not blousy, but certainly a lot of flower, to a very calm and peaceful space. The bathing pool sets that tone as the sort of trickling water of the fountain. And then we've come into the Italian shelter, where we encourage people to be silent, despite my talking now. It's a silent space, and we encourage people to not use their phones and to take a moment to stop and listen to everything that you can hear around you. So everything from the fountain in the bathing pool to the birds up in the trees. This is one of my favourite places at Hidcote. It's the Beech Alley. It's an axis that comes off the Great Lawn and looks right out to the agricultural land beyond. It's a space that people can come at any time of year and find solace. The luminous green leaves of the spring and then the dark green leaves come the summer. And now, as the leaves start to fall, it's a beautiful time, and by winter, when there are no leaves, the rafters of the trees created as if it was a cathedral. It's a beautiful space. Having fought in the Boer War and the First World War, Lawrence Johnston used the garden as a whole to convalesce in. He used it as a space that he could find peace and tranquility, and he designed further beyond once he'd come back from the wars. And the Beech Alley is a good example of that. And now, 75 years later, our visitors, our staff, our volunteers are all using the garden in a very similar way to be able to find that peace and to be able to enjoy being outdoors and in the green and the lush of the garden. Thank you for your support. It's only with your help that we're able to look after these special places like Hidcote.